In February 2026, during Operation Epic Fury, 111 ballistic missiles rained down from the night sky, all aimed directly at the USS Abraham Lincoln, all happening within a single 60-minute window. The outcome of this massive barrage defies basic probability. Every single missile was intercepted. 0 hits were recorded on the aircraft carrier. An aircraft carrier is effectively a floating American city, housing thousands of personnel and billions of dollars in hardware. Destroying one is the ultimate geopolitical prize, delivering an unmatched propaganda victory to an attacker. This diagram illustrates a doctrine known as a saturation attack. To take down a target of this size, adversaries fire massive, simultaneous waves of varied projectiles to overload the ship's radar computers and force lethal blind spots. The math is brutal. Attackers want to exhaust the ship's physical supply of defensive ammunition, firing until interceptors run out while threats are still airborne. Surviving a swarm of 111 missiles required a defense shield that couldn't settle for succeeding most of the time. It had to operate with absolute 100% perfection against overwhelming mathematical odds. This radar visualization breaks down how that perfect survival rate is achieved through a spatial concept called layered defense. There are 3 distinct shrinking perimeters extending outward from the main fleet. The outermost perimeter, or the long reach, starts hundreds of miles away. The carrier doesn't defend itself here. It relies on heavily armed escort ships like Aegis-equipped Arleigh Burke-class destroyers. High above these destroyers, E-2D Hawkeye aircraft act as the fleet's airborne eyes, spotting hostile launches from the upper atmosphere. That airborne data feeds directly into the fleet's SPY radars, which instantly process the telemetry to track and calculate trajectories for over 100 simultaneous targets. Once a lock is established, the destroyers fire interceptors like the SM-3 and SM-6 Standard missiles, built to destroy threats before they even re-enter the lower atmosphere. Inevitably, some projectiles slip past that outer atmospheric shield. That is when the middle perimeter activates. This mid-range net relies on highly agile interceptors like the evolved Sea Sparrow missile and systems akin to the Barak 8. These are specifically designed to intercept fast-closing threats that have survived the initial barrage. Together, these 2 outer layers act as a massive high-tech filtering system, thinning out the sheer volume of the swarm long before it reaches the carrier's immediate vicinity. If a missile breaches that middle net, it enters the inner bubble. This is the final 60 seconds of a threat's lifespan, where the incoming projectile is now close enough to see with the naked eye. At this range, the fleet deploys its close-in weapon systems as the absolute last line of kinetic defense. The most recognizable of these is the Phalanx system. It throws up a literal wall of lead, firing up to 5,000 radar-guided, armor-piercing rounds per minute to shred anything in its path. But if the guns fail, the aircraft carrier relies on its final and most basic defensive maneuver. It moves. A 100,000-ton carrier can sprint at speeds up to 35 knots. In the time a ballistic missile arcs towards its intended impact point, the ship has traveled several miles, forcing the incoming weapon to constantly update its targeting data in real time. This exact combination of computational tracking, rapid-fire kinetics, and sheer physical evasion is what allowed the USS Abraham Lincoln to absorb a massive saturation strike and walk away with a perfect 111-0 survival rate. Adversaries are acknowledging that the Aegis shield is functionally impenetrable, forcing a pivot toward lower-tech, unconventional tactics. The conflict is shifting away from high-tech naval clashes over the open ocean and moving toward brutal, unpredictable, asymmetric warfare. Following the failed missile barrage, Iranian lawmakers publicly proposed launching ground assaults on regional bases to physically capture American military personnel. The physical strain of these encounters doesn't end when the radar clears. The massive pressure of defensive fire creates blast waves that resonate through the ship's structure and the bodies of everyone inside. Over 400 service members have been diagnosed with traumatic brain injuries following these engagements. Even without a direct hit, the concussive energy of the intercepts damages brain tissue, affecting memory, mood, and hormone production. The Pentagon's new directive addresses this internal damage, treating the endocrine system as a critical component of combat readiness. Sailors over 30 now face mandatory testosterone screenings, utilizing hormone intervention to counteract physical degradation caused by chronic blast exposure. The USS Abraham Lincoln is a triumph of mathematical and mechanical engineering. It can neutralize 100 missiles in an hour, yet it leaves the human body to manage the long-term biological fallout of that success alone.